When I opened the box of the missing student's belongings, there was a sheet of paper on top. Don't watch the recording. If you see it, don't trust your eyes. I played it 5 minutes later. And now I wake up in different places every morning. I'm not a detective or a journalist, just a night watchman at Shaline University in Iowa. It's a boring job, but stable. The night shift consists of security cameras, coffee, and rare incidents when someone decides to streak across campus on a dare. But the story I'm about to tell began on Wednesday, October 3rd. A car was left in the parking lot behind the library. A black Toyota Corolla, locked, but with headlights on and an open trunk. I called campus security. We checked the plates. The car belonged to David Larson, a third-year student. He wasn't answering calls, and his dorm room was empty. Within an hour, the police arrived. Everything was proceeding according to protocol until one of the officers opened the trunk completely. There was a box inside. Old, cardboard, unmarked. Inside were ordinary things, a t-shirt, laptop, charger. And also, a mini voice recorder and a note. Written in red marker, don't watch the recording. If you're already watching, don't trust your eyes. It alters the picture. The officers exchanged glances, cordoned off the area, and told me to wait in the security room. But the recorder remained with me. They simply forgot it. I turned it on out of curiosity. Rustling, breathing, and a voice, male, nervous, halting. I thought it was a dream. But it records, my actions change. On the video, it's not me. But I remember doing it. And not doing it at the same time. It changes actions after they've already happened. After a second of silence, a loud thud, as if the recorder had fallen. And that was the end of the recording. At first, I thought it was the ramblings of a madman. But by nightfall, things got worse. The cameras started to lag. The footage from the parking lot disappeared, though I distinctly remember seeing the patrol car arrive. Then, the entire folder for the past 2 days vanished. I called the technician, who said, these things happen. Overwriting, a bug. But something inside me tightened. I went to the dormitory. David's room was sealed, but I knew how to open such doors. There was nothing there except a mattress and an old television. A tube TV with a VHS player. On the floor was a cassette labeled, October 3rd, 2:12 a.m. That very night. I took the cassette and returned to the security room. And, of course, I played it. First, a dark room. Camera somewhere near the ceiling. David enters, sits down, looks directly at the camera. Several minutes of silence. And then he stands up, and begins to move as if someone is controlling him. Smoothly, emotionlessly. He takes a knife, steps toward the wall, and carves into it, watching. It's already inside you. I recoiled. Rewound it. And realized, in different playbacks, the video changed slightly. In one, he writes with the knife. In another, he just sits there. In a third, he stands up and looks directly into the lens. As if the video itself were alive. That same night, I woke up in a storage closet next to the server room. I don't remember how I got there. I checked the cameras, they hadn't been recording from 2 to 3:17. As if that time hadn't existed. The police declared David missing. But they never found him. Another cassette was discovered in the library, showing the dormitory hallway. On it, someone who strongly resembled me is seen leaving David's room at 2:14, holding a box. At that moment, I was definitely in the security room. I have footage of my face from the camera. Except, when I tried to show it, the footage no longer showed me. The same person, but, the eyes were different. Empty. Smooth, without eyelids. I began losing time. Waking up in strange places. Once, on the library roof. Another time, in the basement of the psychology building, where cameras don't work. Each time, I had the same item with me, a sheet of paper with the phrase, "It changes memories while you sleep." I burned the cassette. But it didn't help. Periodically, I receive emails from David's account. The subject, always one word, remember. And the body of the email is empty. I can't say what happened to him. But in the last camera footage I watched, I saw myself. Definitely myself. In uniform, on guard. Except I knew that at that moment I was lying in the infirmary with a concussion after a fall. And that, me, on the camera looked into the lens again. Blinked. And whispered, though there was no sound. "You shouldn't have watched." Now I'm not sure if David ever existed. Or, if he was bait. My relationship with Shaline University had always been uncomplicated. I patrol the grounds, check doors, and make sure drunk students don't break into the science labs at 3 a.m. to see what happens when you mix chemicals. Simple, straightforward work for a simple, straightforward guy like me, Jack Reynolds, age 42, with nothing more remarkable about my life than a failed marriage and a fondness for black coffee. That Wednesday night started like any other. The autumn air carried a bite that promised an early winter, and the campus was quieter than usual. Midterms had most students holed up in their rooms or the library. I was making my usual rounds when I noticed the car. It sat in the back parking lot like an abandoned toy, a black Toyota Corolla, headlights still burning against the darkness, trunk ajar as if someone had been interrupted mid-task. Something about it raised the hairs on my neck. In 15 years working security, I'd developed an instinct. "Reynolds to dispatch," I radioed in. "We've got an abandoned vehicle behind Hartman Library." "Roger that," came Lisa's voice. "Tags?" I approached cautiously, noting there was no one inside. "Iowa plate, NRD 435. The campus database identified the owner almost immediately, David Larson, 20, third-year engineering student with a spotless record. We tried his cell, straight to voicemail. His roommate hadn't seen him since morning classes. Campus protocol required police notification for any suspected missing person. By midnight, 2 patrol cars arrived, and the parking lot became a swirl of flashlights and radio chatter. Officer Brennan, a heavy-set man with perpetually suspicious eyes, approached the vehicle while I hung back. "Car's clean," he called out after examining the interior. "Let's check the trunk." That's when things began to unravel. The trunk was already partially open, but Brennan lifted it fully, revealing a cardboard box. Not a shipping box or storage container, but the kind you might use to clean out an office, worn at the edges, with old tape marks streaking the sides. "What's in it?" his partner, Jenkins, asked. Brennan carefully opened the flaps. "Clothes, laptop, some kind of voice recorder." His expression changed as he pulled out a single sheet of paper. "And a note." I couldn't see it from where I stood, but I heard Jenkins read aloud, "Don't watch the recording. If you're already watching, don't trust your eyes. It alters the picture." The officers exchanged a look I couldn't interpret. Brennan's radio crackled, and he stepped away to speak privately. When he returned, his demeanor had shifted. "Reynolds, we need to secure this area. Wait in your office, we'll need your statement." They moved efficiently, stringing yellow tape and calling for additional units. In the confusion of arriving officers and equipment, the small voice recorder somehow ended up in my jacket pocket. I didn't realize it was there until I was back in the security office, alone with the bank of monitors showing empty hallways and darkened quads. I held the device in my palm, a simple digital recorder, the kind students use for lectures. Something about that note nagged at me. "Don't watch the recording." But this was audio, not video. Unless there was more. Curiosity overwhelmed caution. I pressed play. The first sounds were ambient, rustling fabric, perhaps someone adjusting the recorder. Then came breathing, quick and shallow, followed by a voice that seemed to be fighting panic. I thought it was a dream. But it records, my actions change. On the video, it's not me. But I remember doing it. And not doing it at the same time. It changes actions after they've already happened. A heavy thud followed, the sound of something solid hitting a floor, then silence. I replayed it twice, trying to make sense of the message. It sounded like the ramblings of someone experiencing a psychotic break or perhaps the setup for an elaborate prank. College students were known for both. But as the night progressed, doubt crept in. The security system began glitching. First, the parking lot feed from earlier that evening disappeared from the archive. I distinctly remembered watching the patrol cars arrive, the officers examining the Corolla, but now that footage was gone. That's impossible, I muttered, searching through backup files. By 2 a.m., I discovered the entire folder containing the last 48 hours of surveillance was missing. I called our IT specialist, Miguel, waking him from a sound sleep. "Man, it happens," he said groggily. "System probably overrode itself. There's been a bug in the software since the last update. I'll check it tomorrow." "This isn't a glitch, Miguel. This is every camera, every angle, for 2 days. Look, Jack," he sighed, "unless you want me to drive in at 2 in the morning, it'll have to wait. Back up what you can, and I'll look at it first thing." After hanging up, a chill settled over me that had nothing to do with the building's temperamental heating system. I needed to see David's room. Using my master key card, I slipped into Marshall Hall. The residence advisor was nowhere to be seen, probably asleep, given the hour. David's room on the 3rd floor had police tape across the door, but I'd learned long ago how to slip into sealed rooms without breaking the evidence tape. The space inside was Spartan, even by dorm standards. A stripped bed, a desk with nothing but dust outlines where objects had once sat, and an old television set that looked like a relic from the 90s. A tube TV with a built-in VHS player, the kind that had become obsolete years ago. What was especially odd was that it sat in the center of the room, its power cord stretched to the nearest outlet, as if it had been positioned there deliberately. On the floor beside it lay a single VHS cassette. Handwritten on its label, October 3rd, 2:12 a.m. Tonight. Less than an hour ago. I pocketed the tape and retreated to the security office, where an equally ancient VCR was connected to one of our monitoring stations, a leftover from when campus security still reviewed VHS surveillance tapes. The tape hissed as it began playing. Static gave way to grainy footage of what appeared to be David's room, shot from an upper corner, though I couldn't recall any security cameras being installed in dorm rooms. The timestamp in the corner read 2:12 a.m. David entered the frame, dressed in jeans and a rumpled flannel shirt. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring directly at the camera with an unnerving intensity. For several minutes, he didn't move, just kept his eyes fixed on the lens. Then, without warning, he stood. His movements were wrong, fluid yet mechanical, like a marionette controlled by an unpracticed hand. He reached into his desk drawer and withdrew what looked like a hunting knife. With the same unnatural fluidity, he approached the wall beside his closet and began to carve into it. The message appeared letter by letter, watching. "It's already inside you." My finger jabbed the rewind button. I played it again. This time, David entered the room, sat on the bed, and remained seated, staring. No knife. No message. Confused, I rewound and played it a 3rd time. In this viewing, David stood immediately upon entering and walked directly to the camera, his face filling the frame. His lips moved, but the audio had been removed. I ejected the tape with trembling hands. The timestamp on my phone read 3:18 a.m. The next thing I remember is waking up inside a supply closet near the server room in the basement of the administration building. My flashlight lay beside me, still on but dimming. My watch read 5:47 a.m. I scrambled to my feet, disoriented and alarmed. How had I gotten here? Why couldn't I remember the past 2 hours? I made my way back to the security office and immediately checked the surveillance system. A new gap had appeared in our records. From 2 to 3:17 a.m., every camera on campus showed nothing but static. By morning, David Larson's disappearance had become official. Detective Karen Marsh from the county sheriff's department interviewed me about finding the car. I said nothing about the recorder or the tape. Something warned me against it. "Any chance Larson planned this?" she asked. "Students drop out, go off-grid all the time. Leaving all his belongings in the trunk of his car with the lights on." I countered. "That doesn't sound planned." She made a non-committal noise. "We'll check traffic cameras, see if we can track his movements before he arrived at the library parking lot." "What about the note?" I asked. "The warning about not watching something?" Her expression changed subtly. "What note?" "The one in the box. About not trusting your eyes." Detective Marsh flipped through her notepad. "There was no note recovered from the scene, Mr. Reynolds." A cold certainty settled in my stomach. But I heard Officer Brennan read it aloud. Officer Brennan recovered a laptop, some clothing, and textbooks. Nothing else. I didn't argue. What would be the point? I knew what I'd heard, but clearly, something was very wrong. Over the next few days, the investigation stalled. David's family arrived from Minnesota, hollow-eyed and desperate for answers. Posters with his face appeared across campus. The black Toyota was towed to a police impound lot. Life at Shaline continued with only a ripple of concern, just another student who couldn't handle the pressure. But for me, things were unraveling. I found another tape in the library's media center, hidden behind the ancient VHS collection that nobody had touched in years. This one showed the hallway outside David's room. The footage was grainy but unmistakable. At 2:14 a.m. on October 3rd, someone who looked exactly like me exited David's room carrying a cardboard box. But that was impossible. At 2:14 a.m., I had been in the security office watching the monitors. I had proof. The security feed from my office showed me at my desk, eyes fixed on the screens. Except when I retrieved that footage to show Detective Marsh, what I saw made my blood run cold. It was me in the frame, my uniform, my build, my face, but the eyes were wrong. They were smooth, featureless voids, like skin stretched over empty sockets. I began experiencing lost time. I'd be making my rounds, then suddenly find myself in places I had no reason to be: the roof of the science building, the abandoned pool in the old gymnasium's basement, the mechanical room behind the theater. Each time, I'd find a sheet of paper in my pocket with the same handwritten message: "It changes memories while you sleep." In desperation, I destroyed the VHS tape, burning it in a metal trash can behind the maintenance shed. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in days. The relief was short-lived. The next morning, I opened my email to find a message from Larson at shaline.edu. The subject line contained just one word: remember. The body was empty. The IT department confirmed that David's university account had been deactivated following his disappearance. When I showed them the email, they found no record of it in the server logs. "Are you feeling all right, Jack?" Miguel asked, concern evident in his voice. "You look like you haven't slept in days." I hadn't told anyone about the voice recorder, the tapes, or the missing time. How could I? The story sounded insane even to me. A week after David's disappearance, I was monitoring the cameras when something caught my eye. On the feed from the humanities building, I saw myself walking down the corridor in full uniform, making a routine check of the classrooms. But I wasn't in the humanities building. I was sitting in the security office, watching the monitors. As I stared in horror, my doppelganger on the screen stopped, turned, and looked directly into the camera. It blinked once, then leaned close to the lens and mouthed words I couldn't hear but somehow understood. "You shouldn't have watched." I tried to convince myself it was exhaustion, that I was seeing things. But I knew better. Because at that exact moment, according to the official record, I was in the campus medical center being treated for a concussion after supposedly falling down the stairs in the library, an accident I have no memory of. Now, I question everything. Did David Larson ever exist? The university records say yes, but those can be altered. His family visited campus, but were they really his family? The tapes showed me things that couldn't be real, yet the consequences were undeniably physical. What if our reality is more fragile than we believe? What if something exists that can edit not just images on a screen, but the fabric of what we perceive as real? And what happens to those, like David, like me, who glimpse the editor at work? I still work at Shaline. I still make my rounds each night. But now I avoid cameras. I don't trust mirrors. And each morning, I check my surroundings carefully, because I never know where I'll wake up next. Sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, I think I see him, David, standing at the edge of the quad, watching me. But when I blink, he's gone. The last email came yesterday. Same sender, same subject. But this time, there was text in the body. It wears us like costumes. When it's done with one, it moves to another. You're next. I don't know if I'm writing this as a warning or a confession. I don't know if these words, once composed, will remain unchanged. All I know is that somewhere on this campus, something is watching. And it has my face.